Welcome to the Becoming Sovereign podcast put on by Sovereign. For those of you who listen more than a few times, will note that there is a different name. We are changing the name, same RSS feed and all that kind of stuff, just a name change from the Bitcoin Business Podcast to the Becoming Sovereign podcast as we've grown this business more and are embarking on different areas of business and working with a lot of individuals as opposed to necessarily businesses or companies, individuals that represent companies. We're finding that there's just a different niche we're filling in the market, and it's more than just going into businesses, helping business owners, providing those services. We still do all that. We still do have businesses and business owners that are our customers, but we're finding a lot more that individuals want help as well, just with their own personal stack or their family or financial planning or that sort of thing. So we want the focus on what the company has always been, which is having control of your money, being sovereign, which is why we named the company what we did, and having that autonomy over your life and your finances. And so we're just going to change the name a little to better reflect what we're seeing in the market and who we're dealing with. And so along those lines, we have someone who has started a business and is running a business that is going to join us. He is in the Bitcoin space, so likely not in need of our services. But Keith Gardner from Branta is here. So welcome, Keith. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Yeah, and sorry you got the long-winded intro. I do some long-winded intros, but that one was all administrative, so no fun or exciting tidbits or anything to talk about from there. So um, why don't we get started? I think what you're doing is very unique, very interesting. It's something that is more needed the more I think about it, and the less I thought about it, the less I even sort of had a realization of this need. And we met in Las Vegas at the conference and spent a lot of time with Brian Hirschfield, Fundamentals, who was our guest last week, who recommended that us two talk. And the more we've talked, I've become to see what you're working on, what you're doing. I think it's really cool. So why don't you start with sort of your backstory, what you were doing before, how you got to where you're at, and why you saw this as a problem, and why you decided to fill the gap that existed when. And I'm specifically being vague and obtuse because I want you to explain all of this to the listener. So please feel free to get technical and specific in all the parts that I intentionally left out.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Well, thank you for the intro. Thank you for hosting me. Um, where to begin? So, yeah, I guess I was born in the early 90s. We had the internet, and there's a lot of other cool things. I wanted to make money, and so I studied computer science. I ended up working at Bloomberg in New York City and London, programming, and, pretty quickly discovered the complexities of fiat. And I felt that complexities were a violation of truth and nature, right? Like complexities I view as kind of monstrous, monstrosities, I guess is the word. But whenever you see
Can
something
be
like
both.
this,
Yeah.
yeah. And so like whenever you see something that's overly complicated, like there's an ability to either reduce it and make it properly beautiful, like nature itself, or worse, you might even be getting tricked. And so what that led to was me asking a lot of questions. And then around the time of COVID, discovering Satoshi's white paper in a very like academic and rigorous way. And so from there, I was kind of rubbed the wrong way, in fact, by I think a lot of Bitcoiners' arrogance on, hey, this is the perfect money. Um, and to illustrate like what I mean by that, like it turns out, no, actually Bitcoin is like kind of perfect money, but at the same time, it's like one of the worst monies, right? Because people aren't using it, and because it's hard, and because there's these long addresses, and you need USB cables to use it. And so this led to like a long rabbit hole of reading a bunch of books, podcasts, and all this stuff. And I came to the same conclusion that like economically, Bitcoin's like an airtight, non-leaking system. Yeah, go ahead, Brandon, if you have something.
No, I don't. I was actually putting myself on mute because
Okay.
I'm getting
Yeah.
some noise in the background here, and I don't
Okay.
want to. I don't
Yeah.
want to disturb or disrupt your train of thought. Yet I did. So apologies.
No, no, all good. Yeah. I kind of have like a 5 minute like interlude here. So, you know, understanding Bitcoin is like, wait, this is actually like non-leaking store of value. I became extremely interested in it and allocated some of my savings to it. But then I also understood computers are actually very leaky. And it appeared to me that Bitcoin was discovered or invented and built on the backs of imperfect hardware and existing design systems. Right. And so the white paper is actually abstract and you could say it's perfect. But the problem was that you're using computer networks that perhaps were invented by the military originally and then commercialized because we live in a relatively capitalist society. So you have all this perfect money operating on non-perfect tech. So there's like, right, before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin. And if we're using an iMac or an iPhone or an Android to use perfect money, there's a huge glaring issue, right? Because like none of this tech, maybe aside from Foundation or Cold Card, these very like open source, very cypherpunk sort of pieces of hardware, everything else used, let's just call it consumer technology. Apple is not built for digital scarcity. It's just not. The firmwares and the hardwares and the LCD screen is not the Wi-Fi you plug into. Maybe you use Ethernet. Where does the ISP come from? Are you using satellite internet? All this stuff, like how many layers it takes for me to see you on this screen, Brandon, is massive. And if we're viewing Bitcoin as digital gold that you can just transport instantly, I just saw a million attack vectors. A lot of my time at Bloomberg was spent kind of pen testing, poking around, breaking stuff. And after buying some Bitcoin, it's funny to say buying Bitcoin, but after allocating to Bitcoin, I had this tickle in my brain. And I felt that I was going to be completely enraged if somebody stole my Bitcoin in flight. I understood that, right, seed phrase entropy is quite good as long as you store your seed phrase. I viewed this as a solved problem. At that time, there was good 2 of 3 multi-sig and cold storage devices. I wasn't too worried about going to a bunker, but I was extremely worried about moving my digital gold across cyberspace because from my time at Bloomberg, it was very clear you could just poke a hole and just take stuff. You can just break into stuff. And the problem is that Bitcoin is a bearer instrument, right? I'll keep this down to 2 minutes and then I'll stop. But the core
No, take
difference
as much time as you
between,
need, please. Yeah,
okay,
it's an
let's keep,
important concept. Like I said, I left it intentionally vague and obtuse because I wanted you to go through all this.
yeah, let's keep going then on the train of thought. So, right, then the core difference, if we claim to have perfect money that is transportable gold over the internet, the key difference is obviously that this is a bearer instrument. Just like Nostr, you hold your private key for speech, but in Bitcoin, it's for value, right? And if you can just hold this thing across space and time apparently perfectly, this is a fundamentally different thing than fiat, which is fake in the first place. So with fiat, you're generally pulling, you're giving somebody information and they pull from you. And there's so many intermediaries, specifically with a credit card, right? But Bitcoin, the attack vector exists because you're pointing a gun and shooting it. Rather, you're creating a transaction and broadcasting it. And so if you're intercepted in that process, in this direct peer-to-peer transaction, there's no take. And that's a feature, right? 6 block confirmations on chain. And this UTXO set is settled forever. Lightning is instant, right? Because it's channel based. Now, specifically, the reason that I would be so upset if somebody man in the middle of my transaction was because you can't punch this person in the face, right? Like if somebody's here and tries to take my wallet, I'm just going to try and, well, maybe I'll just yell and maybe I'll punch them. Who knows? But on the internet, it's very creepy. It's very annoying. The fact that somebody could switch the address that I'm routing my payment to. right? So like if you think of train tracks from a 20,000 foot view and you look down, if you're trying to get from A to B, but somebody switches that, like the old villain cartoon with the anvil, Coyote and Roadrunner, and this guy with a mustache and a top hat pulls the lever and the train track diverges. Well, then your train goes to the wrong spot. You can't pull back that train. Bitcoin's the same exact way. And I've been told Bitcoin's this perfect money, but I don't have a way to double check where my Bitcoin's even going. So I thought this was so insane that I cannot privately verify the counterparty before I transact my value. Pause.
No, that's exactly right. Well, and you brought up the example of someone jumping you for your wallet, but at the end of the day, your wallet may have a few $100 cash in there. If you're a real high roller, a few $1,000. But even your credit cards and all that kind of stuff can all just be canceled with a phone call or a switch in an app. And Bitcoin, if you're using on-chain Bitcoin, and there's a distinct possibility you're sending more than a few $100, and in a lot of cases you're sending large amounts of money and settling huge amounts of money, because what you brought up there, the 6 block confirmations, the final settlement that the network provides is ironclad. It is immutable. We talk about properties of the Bitcoin network like it's censorship resistant. You can't say it's censorship proof. And some of these other terms that are sort of smoothed down to accurately reflect a left tail risk of 0.01%. However, the immutability and the finality, that is ironclad. That is 100%. There are no takebacks unless you control, like, I guess you could control like 75% of the mining and maybe undo your transaction. But you're probably not going to go to that effort for a man in the middle attack. So like there is some important context there too, where it goes even beyond just this idea of someone robbing me or someone stealing me. The potential scenarios are the potential cost is so much higher.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly right. And the incentive to attack with man in the middle is that you get all that person's money. And that exists in a bearer instrument that is push-based. Bitcoin's a push-based system from the user's point of view. But you don't really, people don't really man in the middle credit card payments or debit card payments, right? One, because there's so many fraud layers, but two, this is a pull system. And it's just, there's regulation everywhere. But in Bitcoin, there's a huge incentive for it. In the non-Bitcoin crypto space, it's kind of called address poisoning, it's just a very low level term. We talk about address swaps, but really for the end user, what this means is if you're at home and you're coming into Bitcoin, why do you even need to see an address? Like we have human readable names, we have static addresses, payments, but you still have the problem of, did you still get man in the middle? So like Brandon, if you send me Brandon@strike.me, I don't know that that's you. Right. So if I can't verify that, and this is not really Branta's main wheelhouse, or main wheelhouse is for larger businesses like payment gateways, exchanges, remittance companies, e-commerce, but just generally when going to make a payment, people don't want to see alphanumerics. They just don't. And I think as the industry, as we run with this narrative that Bitcoin is perfect money, we need to get perfect UX. And so the dream I always had in my head way in the early day was when I'm given an address to pay, and let's just use, so we work with Zapper. Let's use Zapper as an example. If I'm going to drop in 1K, 2K USD into a Zapper invoice, and this is no fault of Zapper or anybody, but me being ultra paranoid about everything, I'm just so paranoid that my browser or my client side device, so my phone, my computer, has somehow had malware on there. Either through
Funny
browser.
You say that. We just put some earnest money down on a house, and my wife texted me. She's like, "Is this link legitimate? Did it come from these people? I don't want to send this. I don't want to send this money." And I said, I was like, "Well, make sure it's the right thread, make sure it's the right email address, make sure the the link is correct. But yeah, so it happens all the time.
Yeah. And so like, this is, in fiat, it's one thing because you can get the authorities involved, but in Bitcoin, it's not really a thing. Right. And so I just don't really see the industry being able to move forward without a way to actually verify who's on the other side of the screen. Because one thing that we have today is every single time somebody transacts, there's like this emotional residue of anxiety or fear. And you know what kills like user retention and user conversion is any inkling of fear or anxiety. And so like the reason credit cards, you just swipe and it's mindless. I mean, you could argue that's not great for society, but it's great for the product of credit cards because there's no negative emotional residue there. You just swipe. There's no PIN. There's no password on a credit card. It's a bare product. And you don't even have a sense of loss because you actually you swipe the product credit card, right? But you put it back in your pocket. And so the reason credit cards are just so massively successful is they've gamified up and down the entire life cycle, right? Points, sign up points. So on the front end, they get you with the sign up points. It's an incentive. And to not leave, they get you with a credit card. So they have you on the front end. They have you on the back end. Sorry, the credit score on the back end. So if you leave and shut down your credit cards, they threaten you with a stick. They bring you in with a carrot. If you leave, they threaten you with a stick. In the middle, they do all these gamified things. It's really just smoke and mirrors garbage. You can just delete them all today. That's what I did. I have 0. But we don't have any of that in Bitcoin. So what Branta really wants to do first and foremost, like if I were to be here next week, I would just want to share the message that we need to take the best aspects of credit cards and bring them into Bitcoin. And so we can enter Branta now, or we can be theoretical, whichever way you want to go.
Well, I want to actually take a step back to sort of first principles here. So, Bitcoin user like me, I've been using Bitcoin a long time. I've sent thousands of transactions at this point over Lightning, over Bitcoin. And you know what? I'm comfortable with the instruments. I'm comfortable with the people I'm buying from, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, I've kind of I've become accustomed to everything just working and going right. And so for me, the UX is seamless. I don't have any hangups. I don't have any issues with going ahead and just proceeding. And, you and I went out to dinner in Las Vegas and I sent you a Lightning address. And I'm sure you were just like, I know him. I got his signal information from him in person. This is a real address. Boom, off and go. And like, we're all good with that. But why don't you take a step back and explain how a man-in-the-middle attack would happen, what situations it might happen in, and then why someone should be concerned about that? Because this is something for Bitcoiners too, even for people that have been around doing this for a very long time, don't even necessarily realize this is an attack vector because they've become so comfortable with everything. So why don't you walk through that part of it a little bit too?
Yeah, let's. So to address the fact that so many people have done thousands of transactions L1 or L2 and not had an issue thing, which is great. The protocol itself, it works when it works. Well, it always works, I guess, unless if you get messed up somewhere else along the way. So credit cards didn't always have a chargebacks industry. But as the volume of credit card payments exponentially rose, then an entire industry had to come in and patch the holes. That was called chargebacks, right? And the point being, like with Bitcoin payments, we're quite still early. So the volume, meaning the volume is very low. And as the volume increases, the incentive to attack and actually pull off man in the middle goes up. Right. So like we're very early in the sense of like there's other things to attack that are weaker. And maybe actually the best thing about crypto is like if I wanted to go steal somebody's money, I'd probably go try and steal a crypto person's money. Because a lot of that tech is garbage. Whereas a lot of Bitcoin tech is actually very focused on privacy and security. So actually the Bitcoin industry, it's funny, may be massively benefiting from the existence of crypto because all the garbage and scammers go over there as the first thing. Now, okay, so there's that. Right. So man in the middles, expect them more and more, or at least prepare yourself. And really, for us, security is half the question. UX is half the other question, which we can get into more. Now, the technical definition of man in the middle. Alice wants to talk to Bob. Charlie gets in the middle and changes the message. In the context of what we're talking about, that means that Alice is sending Bob an invoice. Bob is going to pay Alice, but that invoice was tampered. It's no longer has integrity. So if Bob goes to construct a transaction, that railroad switch, the lever has been changed, and the Bitcoin goes to a different place. You see it in the mempool, it's gone. Right. And anybody that studied computer science is a very classic problem. There's TLS, there's SSL, there's HTTPS. There's many layers of encryption and protocols, but it's still not fail-proof, right? Like it's not enough, period, for security when it comes to like the importance of Bitcoin. I don't know if you want to, we can dive more into that.
Yeah, so why don't you talk about how if Alice is trying to pay Bob, Alice sends an invoice. In meat space, Charlie would get in and say, "Oh, I'll take this message over to Bob and change some numbers on it or whatever." How does that work digitally?
Yeah, there's a bunch of ways. We've had some white hat examples on our GitHub. They're not public because we don't want them to happen. One example from September was the most common one is probably NPM package, like supply chain attacks, right? And so in this specific example, all right, so for background, Node Package Manager is NPM, and this thing powers many, many websites and actually mobile apps on iOS and Android. So JavaScript's the language. Node Package Manager is the set of libraries that power these websites. So we're on, I don't know what, this is Descript, web.descript. We can probably open it. Do a Control I real quick. Yeah, a bunch of JavaScript loads. I don't know what the back end is here, but the point is it's right. This website itself may be using Node Package Manager. And what happened, I think it was in September, we linked to it on Branta.pro, like our website. And a developer's GitHub got compromised. Don't know who it was, maybe a state actor, doesn't matter. Malicious code was injected into a previously good and relied upon dependency. Then this dependency was published. So now this clean dependency becomes actually a Trojan horse or malware. Then this thing gets propagated everywhere. Now, so then all of a sudden you have bad code running, and this bad code actually was switching addresses on the fly. It would basically look for an address with like a regular expression. If there's a match, switch it out. There's even like, what's the word for this? Like vanity addresses in Bitcoin. You can generate addresses that look similar-ish sometimes.
Yep.
Or they'll say like love in them or something fun. So some of these attacks even generate vanity addresses for the swap, so user eyes won't detect it. That's one example. Browser extensions are bad. 0-day exploits, of course. Like, yeah, we can. So some of them are really nasty. So it was like 10 years ago. There's like Meltdown, Spectre, Heartbleed, and these were actually like chip level exploits. And so like if you're running an older Apple with Intel, the patch was actually at the firmware layer, and it took like 30% performance hit to patch this because it was some crazy like, so like in like computation, when you go down to the chip level, like if statements are kind of like the core of computation. It's like you check this and then you branch off. And so what chips will do at the processor level is actually, to go faster, they will process both path A and B in parallel because you have the chip. The chip is physically able to just ignore the condition, run both cases of code, and optimize the speed of the program. This is probably way too technical to be relevant.
No, this is great.
The point is that like this particular exploit that happened to Apple and basically all Intel chips, we should link to this in the show. Spectre, Heartbleed, and Melt.
Okay, yeah, we will. And the reason I want it to be this technical is because I think just telling a person that, hey, when you get a Bitcoin address or when you get an invoice, it might be bogus. Like
Yeah.
it's very hard if you aren't deep in the technical weeds like you're talking about
Yeah.
to understand how that's even possible. Like how could we get here? How could a Bitcoin address that's being generated, that's being sent to me, how is it possible that it even could be corrupted?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's keep going on this for a minute too. So like, this is Apple we're talking. This is like one of the
yeah,
Mag 7 companies that basically runs the economy of the United States, right? This is not Daylight Computer or like some like small, this is not Grapheno. This is not like some small cypherpunk project. This is Apple. And so what Apple had to do, because they had this nasty chip exploit, was patch the firmware, which resulted in a massive reduction in performance, just to not get zero date at the chip level across sandboxes on your computer. Like I'm on an iMac, I have a guest account and my root account, right? So like you're going to have bad code hopping between these two. So your sandboxing is dead. It's like a root level exploit of the worst possible kind. And if you still run these computers with these old chips, the yeah, like just the performance is taking such a hit. And the point being that, going back to the story of like we have before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin, if Bitcoin's perfect money, we're running in an imperfect world, unfortunately. And so like all these consumer devices, the point of sharing this is that the consumer devices are not secure. Like if you go onto your iPhone, you have a very nice mobile app that is an exchange, maybe it has a loan product in it, maybe you can send, receive, buy, sell. That screen, I'd feel irresponsible not to kind of sound the alarm that like, why are you trusting that screen? One, okay, well, it's great. It works most of the time. But the fact being like, if somebody, not me, but if somebody wanted to push through 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures of coin through this platform, and you can't double check the address with private verified other place, we're just not ready to scale. So
I
we're,
think, well, and that's kind of the point that I wanted to get to was you may trust the third party, you may trust the person on the other side, and they may be
yeah,
trustworthy, but this could be a hardware issue. This could
100%.
be this could be something that is popping up that even though the other side of the transaction is reliable, is known, is not doing anything
Yeah.
nefarious, that someone on the hardware level or potentially the software level, something could have infiltrated the actual hardware device that you're working on that is causing a different appearance in front of you than what is actually being originated. And like that's really the crux of what I wanted to get to and make sure people understood.
Yeah. I mean, let's touch on that again. Like I already name dropped Zap. Branta works with Zap. And so now if you go to pay for your Zaprate subscription and you use certain wallets, actually the Zaprate logo will appear in your wallet, which it shouldn't, but it can now, which is a huge unlock because it's private with zero privacy leak. But what happened was a triangulated check that says, hey, yeah, there's an attestation that this address belongs to who you think it does. And let's break down what you just said, Brandon. So you said that, let's just use the Zaprate example. Zaprate, or let's use any payment gateway. How payment gateways work is there's a backend server, and that company treats this thing like it's their whole company operations, right? The backend server, it's centralized. Bitcoiners love decentralization. Well, every payment gateway is, basically centralized, unless if you're running your own instance. So payment gateways love their own server, and you can control this and you can lock this down very closely. Now, somebody at home going to pay an invoice that needs to be facilitated, they're not touching the server. What happens is the HTML and like the front end gets pulled, whatever, from the server to that user. But importantly, that user's on their own computer, right? In Zaprate, or the payment processor does not control the end device. They don't control the terminal, so to speak, the phone or the computer that the user is using. So as Zaprate or a payment gateway, how can you be responsible for the security of that device? I mean, we're talking about edge cases here, yes, but the point remains that like if that user's computer is pwned, that address can be switched. And, to date, until Branta, basically, there was no good way to verify the address hadn't been tampered with.
Well,
Yeah.
oh no, you can keep going because
Yeah.
because
So
that's gonna lead me to
yeah,
the
just
next
like
part. But
point being, like, if you operate a centralized business, whether it's like an OTC desk, an exchange, a payment gateway, like, yeah, your server's amazing. Like, I'm sure. Uh, and I'm sure your front end's amazing too. The problem is the front end is delivered to the user's device, which is not secure. Pause.
yes, so now for the ultimate question, how does Branta come in and solve that problem?
Yeah. So the physics-based answer is that we preempt like the space-time to resolve the man in the middle. Let's go back to like grandpa answer though. So and we'll
No,
get back to
we don't need a grandpa answer. That's I
okay.
mean,
Well,
because I think this is all really important because this is a deeply technical issue with a deeply technical
yeah,
solution where you want the UX to be extraordinarily simple.
yeah.
And without, so for example, yesterday, I bought some stuff for my wife's birthday. This will come out after her birthday. She won't even know I did this. But not that she listens to this podcast, anyways. Who am I kidding? She listens to me
She'll
all day,
listen to this one.
anyways. Yeah, yeah. But I went to check out, and it says, click here to verify by Branta. And so I clicked it. I got the screen, and it was, verified. It's, and then it gives you the option too. Do you want to verify this yourself, etc. And so for me, it was super simple and like, okay, great, it's verified. But I was like, I have no idea. I mean, I have an idea because you and I have been talking, but an average user will have no idea why that worked. Like, okay, the UX is really simple and it's great, and the UI and the UX are seamless, but I don't have any sort of concept of why I got a verification there. And so I do think it is important. It'll be nice as you're using it to not have to do anything and it's just a dumb button click, but to understand why you're actually getting that security and why you should quote unquote trust it, I think are important. And if you don't understand sort of those root level issues about why it is secure and why it is trusted, then it's almost just meaningless why even click the button. So
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into it. This might be like a bit of a little long one here. So long answer is space time, but first before that, how this looks to the end user is extremely important, and it needs to be zero clicks. So you talked about clicking a little button at checkout to verify the address. That kind of cracks the door open. You now have a portal to look, hey, this address is attested by Branta, which is we just look at ciphertext. We don't see the plain text addresses. That's portable. You can do that on different devices. So if your current device is pwned, you can take that verification to any other device. But anyways, let's get back to how does this thing work? So, all right. So defeating man in the middle. Your best friend is time. When does a man in the middle happen? Well, you have to solve the man in the middle before the man in the middle happens. Otherwise, you're hosed, right? So basically today, everybody's hosed against man in the middles. It's a vulnerability, unfortunately. That's just how it is. Being the bearer of bad news is not fun, but so how you defeat the man in the middle is you preempt the man in the middle. And what happens is the receiver. So, right, in order to move Bitcoin, you actually have to give somebody something first. That's called an address or an invoice. And when that happens, the receiver will encrypt this address or invoice. So we're talking on-chain or Lightning. So then this thing is encrypted. Nobody can decrypt it without the key. The receiver keeps the key. The ciphertext is injected into Branta. So space and time. So before a man in the middle is possible, you encrypt this. So that's the time aspect. And the space aspect is you port this over to Branta. So you post this HTTP post with one simple API call. This is really, really technical, guys. Feel free to forward through. But I want to be very, very granular here to get this out there.
it's super important. I mean, it's the crux of everything here. Without this information, it's a binary outcome. It either works or it doesn't. So without this, it's all kind of irrelevant. So
Yeah.
I do think it's really, really important. And
Okay.
so people should listen because it does matter. So,
Yeah, cool. So, right. So before the min in the middle, you encrypt and then you inject into Branta. So you've front ran the timing aspect and then you've distributed across space. Now you have two good copies of this address. The receiver obviously has a plain text version. The receiver knows what address you're receiving at. Branta has the encrypted address. We don't know. We cannot be a honeypot. I don't want to be a honeypot. No one else wants to work with a honeypot. We don't want to have a big bunker of plain text addresses. So Branta has a bunch of encrypted addresses. Okay, cool. And then so what happens? The receiver has, verified, registered with Branta the encrypted ciphertext, and the receiver sends the invoice to the payer. Now, what does the payer see? They see a QR code. They take out their phone and they go to pay. Now, let's talk about there's on-chain, there's unified, there's Lightning, there's also things like ARC and stable coins. Well, let's just start really simple. On-chain. SegWit address. BIP321 by MEP specifies query parameters that you can tag onto the back of a legacy address, taproot address, SegWit address. So what that means is you can tag a QR code. And that QR code is tagged with a Branta ID and then actually the decrypt key. So that is kind of the key, so to speak. So then this QR code is like a Branta compatible sort of QR code. And when you take Mana Wallet or Blitz Wallet or Arcade Money Wallet and you scan that, wallets can tap into the permissionless SDK. And when the wallet SDK sees, hey, there's a little tag here, an ID and a decrypt key, boom, ping the server on the user's wallet, get back the ciphertext, and that wallet locally has the key. Branta never sees the key and cannot decrypt the on-chain address. This is all BIP321 compatible. And then the plain text address is verified. Meaning if let's say just Peony Lane, right? We announced with Peony Lane. If you know Peony Lane is running Branta, and you go to pay, that logo appears before you send. So if I'm in Mana Wallet and I go to pay Peony Lane, Branta is just this invisible magic thing for the user that kind of magically turns QR codes preemptively into logos of the recipient. And what that means for the user is 0 clicks. But what you actually have is a sense of like relief. Because you can actually, and why it matters for user and business terms is like conversion. Like businesses want more conversion, higher retention. If you feel good using your wallet and you see this magic image before you pay this weird machine logo, like that's never been like done before in Bitcoin.
yeah, so there's almost like a psychological aspect to it too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So two questions I have. So one, what do you do in a situation where the sender of the address's hardware is compromised?
Yeah.
So like the vendor's hardware is compromised.
Good question. Yeah, we have dots on this. So, okay. So that basically equates to, okay. So how this works in the back end, more business talk, right?
Yeah.
Why can you today not just post to our Branta server? That's what you're actually asking, right? Like if we think Zaprig or somebody's posting to our server, but actually it's some attacker, some random person, that's really bad because then there's bad encrypted data in our database. We still don't know who it is or what it is. So there's a number of mitigation strategies there. Yeah, let me think about what I want to share here. So yeah, so the basics are there, like whitelisting IPs. Meaning, like, if you know your server operates in whatever IP range because you're on a certain hosted environment or whatever, that essentially whitelists that API key only for use within that same like hosted infrastructure. right? So that's kind of like a quick and easy mitigation. Um, in terms of the actual, hardware being compromised, there's a couple mitigations there as well. They're a little more complicated, and I probably won't speak to them right now.
Okay.
But we have to think if we want that to be public or not.
Okay. So, and then I guess the next question I was going to ask is, I'm guessing this is all closed source, correct?
So the core server that takes in encrypted data is closed source. Like that
Yeah.
handles email, user setup, hosts the images and stuff, generates the API keys. Yes, that is closed source. The Pay server plugin is open source. Wallet SDKs are open source. A few other components. So it's kind of a hybrid model.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really, I mean, you are building sort of like a reputation here that like that Branta is verifying this for me, and I trust them because they have a history of doing this. Is that fair or no? Is that
I mean, yeah, I think every single business has like a track
of
record kind of.
course? Yeah, that's
y-
yeah. That's
y-
why you're a good business. Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, I
yeah,
definitely view that as like critical, and like it's also extremely critical that like violate that once we're dead, right? So
right. 100%. Yeah.
yeah, and I think this model is extremely important. It's when I talked about like space time and like the to preempt the man in the middle attack and stuff like this, the design is actually like relatively simple. Um, but yeah, wherever you want to go with this, in back just I feel like I didn't quite answer the question on like the payment gateway server compromise. So let's just go back to that. So the first thing is if the payment server gets compromised without Branta, that company is, I don't want to say the company is dead, but the company is like inoperational for however long it takes to remove, right? So if you have like a very high throughput payment processor, payment gateway that gets pwned somehow, everything is inoperable. You have to assume a totally red state. Without Branta, that's true. With Branta, that's true depending on how many handshakes are done ahead of time. So when I talked about like distributing green copies of information, the timing there matters. Because essentially what you asked was like, are you moving the man in the middle to the iMac at the user's home or office or their iPhone in the back of a car? Or are you moving the man in the middle to the actual like core infrastructure stack? Bybit, I think was like
Exactly.
like Bybit was very deep on the back end, if I remember correctly. I'd have to look at the use case again, but really, if the core server gets pwned, you're very likely just pwned. That being said, like our main focus is not on the core server of an OTC being pwned or a payment gateway. That can be remediated and is by time, but the number of handshakes has to be done correctly ahead of that. And that's also it's such a tail risk edge case on like anything could be pwned with a dormant virus. Like when you think about penetration testing or exploits, when I talked about Heartbleed, Spectre, and Meltdown on the Intel chip, like Google Labs discovers most of these. But the question is always, how long was this 0-day present, right? Like how long was this thing there undiscovered? So like that question is like will break your brain. If you think about it, like this is an Apple mouse. This is an attack vector. I shouldn't be showing this. Don't attack me. Somebody attacks me through this mouse, I'm going to tweet about it. And then I don't know. That's kind of cool if you can do that. But like there might be a dormant exploit in that. I don't know. There's a Bluetooth protocol. There's so much software. Is it really secure? I don't know. Right. And so like to your point about compromising the core server, it's just very, very, very complicated.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the answer is that's not really a problem you're solving for. You're solving for a different problem. You're solving for malicious uh, malicious actors online try to spoof,
Yeah.
transactions in the middle. But
Yeah.
you're not trying to be a security blanket for a company at the end of the day. You're trying to be a shield for a consumer.
Yeah. We're super focused on the payments use case, security, yes, but also the UX, which maybe we can get into that, whatever you're feeling, honestly.
Yeah, let's get into the UX. So, I mean, like I said, I used it yesterday. I one clicked it, and
Yeah.
it was great. I mean, I'm a little more, I guess, tech forward, willing to take another step. I mean, it's insane to say it, but one step is a
Yeah.
lot more steps than a lot of people are willing to take. So,
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think most people don't know this, but actually, Bronta's first product was a desktop, totally open source. There's really no business model attached to it. But we were watching the clipboard, and the story is kind of like it's kind of like you talking to you. It's just making sure your clipboard address doesn't get swapped on device, like on your iMac or Windows. And then the kind of the V2 you just spoke to. So this was all of a sudden between two entities, right? Between you, Brandon, at home paying whatever business you were paying. And what Branta then enabled was you could pay that business, but you also had a different channel. You had a different channel to just look through and see who's on the other side. Like, is this address like matching with his business? Right. Whether you choose to or not. Now, people like that a lot for sure. And like it unlocks a new capability, but there's like still an education component. The UX is kind of, it's okay. It's not terrible, but it's not like 8 billion people good. So
yeah, I mean, I've gotten to a point now where I just am so used to using bad UX that like
yeah.
honestly all of it seems easy and pretty decent to me. And then
Yeah.
I get feedback from other people, even Bitcoiners are like, "Oh, it's terrible. I had this issue and I had that issue." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I just reload the app or whatever." So I don't know. I'm kind of like the fish swimming in dirty water, and who doesn't realize the water's dirty, as opposed to
Yeah.
just the fish swimming in water. So
Yeah, I mean, that's also why you're really good at what you do, like, because it comes to you, right?
yeah, it's intuitive to me. Like it makes sense. Like I understand sort of the next steps of the UX and what's trying to be done, and it's almost like a like improvisational music, right? Like you didn't have that guitar riff spelled out for you, but like you went into it, like you understood where the music was going, and then you played it accordingly. And yeah, maybe maybe I've just gotten to that point with mediocre UX.
Are you a guitarist?
I had a very short stint dabbling when I was in junior high, and then high school rolled around, and it was just 24/7 sports for me, and so
Oh,
I kind of
cool.
had to give up the guitar, but never got back into it. It's actually sitting over like 4 feet from me right now. My 16 months old son, loves plucking on it, so
Wow,
maybe he'll pick it up one day.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, back on the UX is like, yeah, you said it, one click is too many. And, really in terms of product design, like distribution is king. Zero friction is king, distribution is king, and getting as visceral as possible is king as well. So like if you think about human beings' five senses, vision is huge, right? Like people want to be able to see, and it's just something we do all day. Like you don't have to think, oh, let me like boot up my eyes, let me charge my eyes. I have to do a software update to my eyes. That's like completely preposterous to even say. But like eyes are your best tool. And so when we talk about product design for Bitcoin, why are we not leveraging the eyes? And I don't mean looking at a string. I never want to say the word Bitcoin address again, but like what Branta does is we magically turn in QR codes of both 11 invoices into logos for you. So it's this magic machine you can tap into as a wallet bill. You just plug in. The network's growing all the time. It's getting more powerful by the day. The number of connections is many to many, right? So you bring any wallet you want, you plug into this thing, and it's a magic machine that turns QR invoices into logos. And, you know, the eyes of the human being react to that. Like it means something. Like people love Peony Lane. There's Bitcoin beans. There's so many like iconic logos. Like what is Nike without the swoosh? So what Branta does, it just pulls forward through time. It basically like gives you a receipt in your wallet. Like if you're using Blitz wallet, Mana wallet, whatever, and you go to pay Peony Lane, you actually see that, yeah, this is actually Peony Lane that I'm about to pay, and I can choose to pay or not. Right. And so like question for, I don't know, not question to you, Brandon, but like, you know, you mentioned putting money down towards, I believe a home. Now, if you do in question to the audience too, bank wires, you know, when was the last time you did a bank wire? And like, do you remember like some sort of autocomplete? Like, do you remember Bank of America being pre-populated before you sent?
So I don't remember the wire, but what I do remember is when connecting to Bitcoin exchanges or, sorry, all purity test people out there. I bought some KYC Bitcoin in my past. Please don't at me on Nostr and call me a failed human being. Also connecting like bank accounts to credit cards to be able to pay, every month or whatever, or connecting to like a mortgage. Also purity test people. Sorry, I do have a mortgage. Please also don't kill me for that. Like connecting to that to be able to pay it. That's when I notice like the logo pop up. So, or connecting through like Plaid or Stripe, you'll put in your bank account, and then it'll be like, oh, this is a Chase bank account. This is a B of A bank account, and it's like it's recognizing that those numbers are associated with an institution, and so like that is where I notice it. And yeah, you absolutely do get a psychological sense of security. You're like, oh, something's running. It's recognized these numbers as from this institution, or this routing number belongs to this institution, or whatever it might be. So I will say that is absolutely an instance in my life. I honestly, I'm not sure I ever sent a bank wire. I would always just do ACH or Bitcoin. So, but yes, in those situations, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, like Plaid is really interesting. So I'm not an expert on Plaid's like privacy posture, right? Like fiat's just very different. The traditional fiat world it's just different than Bitcoin, right? It's a pull system. It's highly regulated.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bare instrument, right? And so
far from it.
Yeah, right. Right, and like a very good way to think about Branta and what we're building is Plaid. It's Plaid, but it's being built for Bitcoin natively and that whatever L2s, with the number one priority being privacy and technical rigor and correctness. Right. So like to come up here and say, hey, we're building Plaid for Bitcoin. This is actually the first time I'm saying it publicly.
It's the first thing that popped to my mind, to be honest with you. But yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I don't know if you shared that, but.
No, I didn't. It was just when we were talking before, like that's immediately what popped into my head was that. So
yeah, and yeah. Right, and so like it's really interesting to see how this is evolving because, I mean that's kind of exactly what it is with the caveat though, like the way that Branta operates, it's on the fly payments, and we don't persist anything. We actually don't really have visibility. So like the actual decryption of like the data happens only for the payer, which is how I want it. Cause like, this is the whole thing like that I've wanted this whole time was I want to be able to whip out my Bitcoin wallet and just make sure I'm not getting tricked if I pay Sovereign.
Yeah. And we don't want to trick you either.
Yeah.
And I got the guy trimming the hedges behind me. So apologies. I might have to pull a Marty Bent here and go pay the guy to wait a half hour till we're done. But
did he do that? Oh no.
Yeah,
interview or something.
famously, yeah, many years ago, he had to go
That's funny.
pay his neighbor, or he didn't pay his neighbor. He told him he'd finish mowing his lawn for him, if he, so he would stop. So
I
yeah,
didn't know
I would
that.
just pay this guy. I don't know if I would finish trimming whatever he's trimming out there, but I'll try to mute as much as I can here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other thing too, like on my mind, just like stepping back, like forget about Branta. Like we all want Bitcoin to win, right? We just want sound money to win. We just want truth to win. That's all we want. Humans want to be sexy. They want to be healthy. And you know what you can't do? You can't be healthy or have vitality if somebody's stealing all your money or your time, right? That's what it comes down to. And when I look at the Bitcoin industry, one of the there's a lot of challenges, but one of the main challenges is just adoption for non-technical people. And like when I set out to build this thing, it was really just to, I don't want to say help other companies and help users, but just like augment slightly one very, significant problem, which is bad UX or like anxiety. Like I said, all right, well, if we can solve anxiety for payments, that'll probably help adoption.
Yeah, I mean, the number of people that I've talked to that that are like, okay, I get the economic case, but I'm 65 and I don't want to
Yeah.
learn how to do all this stuff over again. Like, I know how to use the fiat system. I've got my retirement account. I've got my house. I've got even some of these people are, like I got bars of gold and silver, buried somewhere. I just
Yeah.
don't want to deal. I just don't want to deal with like another thing, another app, another piece of new technology. It's like it's almost like technology is going so fast that people they don't want to increase their bandwidth for something new, and even if they understand the benefits, even if they understand the the value proposition, it's like still I don't want to do it. I would rather slowly get poorer than have to learn this. So I
Yeah. I mean, it's
yeah.
hard. It's hard. And it's not the most welcoming space either. Like that's one thing that the non Bitcoin exclusive circles do much better is marketing and shiny bells and whistles. And I'm not promoting what are these things called, the NFTs or inscriptions. Like I'm not saying that at all. Like that's not a
Don't pretend you don't
monetary.
know what ordinals are, Keith. Come
I
on.
forgot what they were even called, but I'm not promoting those. What I am talking about though is like the actual usage of money, having not even bells and whistles, just like make it feel, and like wallets have come so far too. Like credit to the wallet builders because there's a lot of liability and risk and rigor that goes into that. So I'm not to bash anybody. I think the builders are amazing. It's just a very hard problem.
Of course, I mean it's a very difficult problem. I mean, I talk about it all the time on here. Just in the last 5 years, how much better everything's gotten, and how much building has taken place on here, and it is great. And again, as I was talking about earlier, I'm used to all this kind of stuff, so it seems pretty seamless for me. But I get it, like hopping in for the first time, and we're 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 in the very early stages of building on top of a base layer protocol, and it's just like the internet wasn't the same thing. It was very difficult to access. Only certain people knew how to do it, and then you had to be running your own server, and then eventually it got a little easier. It kind of got deputized. Centralized companies would run a server so you could connect to mine. Here's how you do it. You got to tie up your phone line to do it, and it makes a weird noise. And then there was no way to get around the internet. Then it was like the search engines came. So I mean, all this stuff is to be expected, and UX will improve. But there is absolutely no doubt that that is a barrier to entry right now. And I mean, I have people I know that have decent amounts of Bitcoin, and they're like still scared to use the network. So
Yeah, and like, instead of using the words security and UX, which are kind of like that's usually like the story I go into, or like that I repeat to myself. Well, another way to think about what you just said is in transacting in Bitcoin is just what are the layers prepayment or like prepayment, like post invoice prepayment? What are the layers that we're working with? And it's kind of cool. I mean, look, Bitcoin's amazing because you can just go peer to peer. You can literally go Alice to Bob and it's raw. And that's really powerful. And that feature, it's in the protocols. That's fantastic. Pray that never gets diminished. That's why tools like Sparrow, BTC Pay Server are so critical in the open source wallets, all of that, being able to run a node, all this stuff is extremely important. But at the same time, when we talk about 8 billion people not downloading Sparrow, not running BTC Pay Server, right? So when you talk about 8 billion people, all of a sudden, bit of, protection on the front end of the payment, not even in a fraud way, just in, fraud's a tough word, not even in like a sanctions way, but in just a, are you paying who you think you're paying with? Like that's essentially what Branta is. Optionally sits in front of your payment, and it really just empowers you and the receiver. And that doesn't exist now, which is crazy because when you do go to do bank wires or credit card or debit card payments, Venmo, gosh, Zelle, like how many layers are there?
Oh
It's not,
gosh, don't even get me started.
yeah, it's not, it's like double
There's so many
digits.
layers. There's so many layers that it's basically impossible to explain it to someone that doesn't understand Bitcoin. Like the amount of why wouldn't I just use Venmo or why wouldn't I just use Zelle? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be Charlie from Always Sunny with the strings and the pins, like trying to explain why how many levels of wrong you are, and it's because there are so many levels of intermediation that you are skipping over from what, as we talked about, from a peer-to-peer cash that any two people, Alice, can transact with Bob, to Venmo or Zelle, which is, I mean, if there's, if there's not 10 layers, then there's eight. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot. And like, it's just very, very wild. Like if you go to pay a payment gateway invoice with any of the popular wallets, I mean, it's powerful, that you can just do that, but there's just room for improvement in a private, non-opinionated way. And like, that's how we're building is this thing is, it's private. So it's completely non-invasive. Like we don't see the amounts people are moving. We don't see the addresses, the invoice. And then we give something to the user. Right. So yeah.
Well, I think to your point, the big part of the value proposition of Venmo or Zelle is like that logo. Like it's a trusted institution that they send money to people and then they transfer it and then it goes into their bank account and like okay, maybe they have to wait a day or two or whatever it is, but like they see that verification there. They know it's going to, based on their experience, based on their past, that it's going to be there, and until one day when it isn't, and um, that'll be a whole separate can of worms. But I would argue that's where Branta stands out is
Yeah.
that that will never happen because it's using the Bitcoin protocol, not the fiat protocol. So
And then like imagine a either public or a private business moving or facilitating, say really small, $10 million worth of volume per month. Right. So say you're just operating, you're doing 10 mil volume. And let's say we already talked about like dormant exploits, right? Like these exploits that we can mention, like supply chain attacks through NPM packages, chip level, browser extensions, whatever. Let's just say one of those pops up and it happens to be actually a successful address swap for Bitcoin. And if you're operating a business and you say, okay, about 40% of my users are using Chrome, this attack affects Chrome users, what am I going to do? Because all my Chrome users, as far as I know, are maybe literally getting address swapped right now. Are we just going to send out a mass email? Are we going to have our devs go in and make some sort of alert banner and disable Chrome? What are we going to do? We're going to be scrambled, right? And the real thing that's happening there under the hood is that users were not already given the option to validate that address. I guess I'm kind of selling Branta here, but the whole value prop is, let's say you're doing 10 mil volume a month. exploit is discovered and it starts happening to people. You see on Twitter, it goes by, right? Now you're thinking internally, we're having conversations saying, gosh, like how many of our users are going to be affected? What's the reputational cost going to be? Do we just shut this platform down until we can patch it? Well, turns out the whole reason for Bronta's existence is to let you continue operations through that, right? So Branta is like, the storm happens, you're good, right? Because your users have the ability and even like the wallet side detection of, wait a minute, tampering, basically tampering here. So like at least you can continue operations, even though, yeah, like exploits are not good, they need to be patched and remediated, obviously. But if your users don't even have a way to see through and have another channel, when the main channel goes down, your main op goes down.
Yeah, I mean that makes a ton of sense to me, and the framing as sort of consumer protection. I mean that's really what it's all about. So
Yeah, so I mean, people like, I think just having like the little image in the wallet is good, but yeah, we hope people like it. We're just doing our thing over here.
no, it's super cool, and it's as I was talking with Brian about this, that there's these issues in Bitcoin that no one really thinks about, that no one really to we when I had him on our podcast, we were talking about the don't trust verify, and it's like, well, how many
Yeah.
of you have really verified everything? Like, have you gone to the plant of the chip manufacturer that put the processor in your computer? Have you gone to the plant where they're make? Did you watch them assemble your board? Did you watch them assemble your screen? Did you were joking earlier about your mouse, like did you watch them put that mouse together? And the answer is, at some point it becomes impossible to truly verify, and the best you can do is some sort of facsimile or abstraction of verification, where it's better than doing nothing or trusting a potential third party, and at least you're doing it yourself and seeing it with your own eyes, but you are still relying on trust along the way too. And even you mentioned earlier, like, I get the cold card because I'm of the belief that those guys are hardcore Bitcoin believers, and but at the end of the day, I mean, they could have put now they do have I'm not going to get into what type of software they have. It's effectively open source, so people have verified it. But now I'm relying on other people to have verified the code that's in there, and still, no one's verified the hardware other than the people at CoinKite, the company itself, and I'm trusting them that the hardware isn't malicious. And so, yeah, it some level down the chain, there is no pure verification really, unless you've built absolutely everything from scratch yourself, written the code, verified it, and are running it. There is no, maybe there might be four people in the world doing that, so maybe less. So it is something that people may not even realize it, but you are abstracting away layers of trust. So
Yeah, kind of like, it's one of those things where if you look at moves, right? Like if you start verifying, then you verify something else in the rabbit hole. There's no bottom to that pit.
right, right, yeah. I mean, you like end up at God. So
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
unless you're the creator of the universe, yeah, exactly.
yeah, 100%. It's like that. You remember that old Wikipedia joke where it's like the first link in Wikipedia? Where do you end up? Philosophy, God, some language. You end up at some very like abstract word page.
Yeah, that I don't know, but I mean, I do know, like, it's one of those things where you'll be reading a Wikipedia article and it'll be like, click the link to see this, and then you're in a new article and you're reading that, then you click the next link, and the next thing you know, you're I don't know, you're reading about ancient Sumeria when you were trying to figure out a recipe for like cheesecake to start. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother interesting one is like the hyperlink.
Yeah.
Anyways, digress.
No, all good stuff. All right. Well, I think we got to the stuff I wanted to cover as it relates to Branta and the explanation. And as I said earlier, I do think it is important that people understand the technical parameters because without the technical parameters, you don't understand why there's a need for this. And hand up, I'll be the first to admit when it was first explained to me this like need for address verification, I'm like, why do I need that? This stuff works. What are we doing here? And it wasn't until I understood the more sort of technical parts behind it where it's like, oh, okay, I get the value proposition here. Now I understand. So I really wanted to focus on that, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. So, is there anything else you want to get to before we wrap here?
No, I mean, just grateful for you for hosting it. The time in Vegas was great. I always love hearing, first impressions of the company, the product, Branta. I don't know if you want to share more, we can do it now in private, doesn't matter. But from my side, no, just thank you for hosting us. And well, my closing statement would be everybody working on Branta loves Bitcoin. We love sovereignty. We love privacy. We love sound. And, you know, we just want to, earn everybody's trust, build the best thing possible. And we always love feedback. So that's my closer.
And I appreciate that too. Here at Sovereign, we're doing the same thing. Like, we're trying to prove to other companies, other organizations, like, hey, trust us with people that need help with their setups, or trust us with people that might need some education, or just want someone to talk to, or want some help doing business planning, or these sorts of things. It's We do one or two here. We do a really good job. We have some really happy customers, and like that's it. It just takes time, but it's all about building the reputation, building the trust. And I do think you want to talk about what we were talking about earlier with Toxie Maxis and an unwelcoming community. While there are some negatives to that, the upside to it is you basically weed out all the fraudsters like immediately. Like anyone who's a bad actor or a scammer, like basically gets called out and pretty much excommunicated. Like, I'm not going to name specific names, but there's some people I'm sure you can think of in your head, and I can think of in my head, that we would never send anyone to. We would tell them, don't listen to their podcast, don't use their company. They're just, we cannot recommend them. They're bad people, and it's like they've torpedoed their reputation. They haven't earned it, and the community as a whole, there's like 95% consensus on a lot of these folks and companies. And some of them are just in bankruptcy and speak for themselves. There's nothing more to say other than that. And so that is the positive side, is that a lot of the fraudsters and people who don't take Bitcoin as seriously, or it isn't their number one priority, they're just in there to try to make money off of people and find someone to be their exit liquidity. Like, those people do get shoved aside pretty quickly. And so I do appreciate that aspect of it, and appreciate your approach to it, and the fact that, yes, it's same here at Sovereign. We care about Bitcoin, Bitcoin only. It's the most important thing. And we do value all these things, and we will keep those tenets and that ethos in mind as we run the business and as we carry out our dealings. And same with you guys, and that means a lot, and that is important. So
Yeah, it's good to just time in the arena, results show for themselves, and it's good to just talk about openly.
agreed. And it is important, and making those things the core of your business and sticking to your principles and values and not compromising on those. It may not feel good in the short term, and it might be headaches in the short term, and you might even miss out on opportunity for a lot of short-term money. But long-term, it's the only viable way to run a good business. So Keith, really appreciate you coming on, walking through this. Very cool what you're working on, and why don't you tell people where they can check out Branta, where they can check you out, anywhere else you want to direct them or anything like that?
Our website is branta.pro, Branta.pro, PRO. And we are Branta Ops on Twitter. That's where we spend most of our time.
Awesome. And as always, you can find us at Sovereign, SOVREIGN.io. That's the best place to reach us. We'll just check the contact us area. We'll get back to you, or follow me personally, Brandon Karpeles on LinkedIn, or on Plebeian on Noster. I will also get back to you if you want to reach out to me. You can find the Sovereign account on X, LinkedIn, Instagram, Noster, and YouTube as well. So just search the name Sovereign, SOVREIGN, and we should come up. So those are the best ways to get a hold of us. And Keith, thanks so much again for joining. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.